My brain is like a revolving, operator platform. It's quite easy to then start the process of recommending the operator brand that suits with their brand. We need to make sure that what's been signed up for is delivered. And that is the key message.
Welcome back to Brave Ideas, where we chat with the leaders in commercial real estate to answer all questions space as a service and help office real estate reposition to meet the evolving demand from the future of work. This podcast is for anyone involved in commercial real estate in any way. If you're an investor, fund manager, developer, landlord, operator, property manager, agent, or broker, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you prefer to watch the full episode and join our newsletter, head over to braveideas.media. I'm your host, Caleb Parker, and this episode, I'm joined by Amy Taylor in a meeting pod on site at the London offices of Workplace Creations Group. Amy's an international partner and head of Flex Office Advisory at Cushman & Wakefield in London. Since 2010, she's advised both occupiers and landlords on Flex Office solutions across EMEA, helping clients navigate leasing, partnerships, and manage Flex strategies, totaling over 1 million square feet of office space. And joining me to kick off this episode is my friend Sam Gamble, co-founder of Return Suite, our headline sponsor this season. Sam, this episode with Amy, she gives a brilliant view into how brokers are thinking and how they're guiding larger occupiers through the changing Flex landscape.
Yeah, I think Amy's got her finger on the pulse. And so she laid out exactly where the market is right now. Occupiers aren't just asking whether they should do flex or traditional. They're expecting both options on the table at the same time. It's becoming a much more sophisticated conversation.
And what stood out to me was how much their clients want from fully managed solutions. Not just the space itself, but end-to-end fit-outs, hospitality, amenities, service levels, ongoing support. It's part of why they're leaning into enterprise flex and managed offices.
Right. And you can see that in her example of the client who went from, was it like 45,000 square feet of traditional lease down to 13,000 square feet in a customized flex solution with Uncommon. They didn't just reduce their footprint, they upgraded their experience, eliminated a ton of CapEx, the design, and handed off a lot of the operational complexity.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a lot of that happen right now as companies optimize. And this example gets right to Amy's point around decision-making drivers. It's not just financial. It's about speed to market. It's about avoiding fit-out costs, dilapidations. It's making office space easy to procure and adapt. We got to be flexible now, and that's why operators with strong hospitality DNA are winning more enterprise customers.
The other piece I loved was her insight into how brokers are increasingly acting more like advisors instead of just transaction managers. And that's definitely something that we've been seeing with the brokers that have really embraced Flex. They're helping clients compare apples to apples on a total cost of occupancy rather than just kind of the headline rent.
Yeah, she talked about how it used to be and how it is now. And I much rather prefer how it is now. But, even beyond the financials, Amy talked about the growing importance of the operator brand alignment for both occupiers and landlords. The operators who are really good at articulating their vibe, the ethos, and the service levels makes it much easier for brokers to match the right customers to the right buildings and the right brands to the right landlords.
Yeah, and that's really what we've been talking about all season, it seems like, just kind of how flex operators can differentiate themselves through their brand, their service, and hospitality. And the ones that do that are positioned to thrive as enterprise adopts more and more flex.
Spot on, Sam. Well, let's get into this. 3, 2, 1. Let's kick it. Welcome to Brave Ideas, Amy.
Thank you. Good to be here.
In person at Workplace Creations.
Indeed.
Their podcast studios.
Nice walk down from the station.
Really easy. Nice sunny day in London.
Very much so. More to continue.
We got lucky this week, right?
We did. Fortunately, yeah.
You weren't at MIPIM this year, but it was crazy rainy. And I felt like I was in London the whole time. So it's good to get the sun coming back.
Yeah, that's good. And I'm glad I didn't go, if that's the case. So maybe next year, the sun will come out. I'll be there. Be fine.
And we'll do a podcast there too.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, let's kick this off. I'm really excited about this because we were just chatting before we hit record, and we share some sort of overlapping career history at IWG for our sins in the past.
Yes. Badges of honor, of course. Yep.
badges of honor, and you came into IWG from MWB.
Correct. Lots of abbreviations. So 15 years ago, the journey started, MWB, and they were acquired by Regis. And then after Regis, I joined a niche firm, set up a brokerage, and then came to Cushman & Wakefield in 2017. And I've been here for 8 years, 8 glorious years.
8 glorious years.
Yeah, advising occupiers globally on flexible workspace solutions, which is what I've been living and breathing for a long time, just like you, by the sounds of things. So yeah.
Well, I think we can all agree the future's flexible. We just need to get the finance and lenders on board with that, right?
Absolutely.
But don't worry, guys, we're not going to talk about that in this episode. But what I would like to talk about are some of the trends you're seeing, feet on the ground, on the front lines, with office customers. What are you seeing from your clients right now?
I think, and just to take a step back in terms of the team where we sit in Cushman, so my team forms part of our wider tenant team. So it isn't just a case of flexible office requirements coming through. So we are dealing with occupiers that don't know what they want when they first start talking to us. So you'll have a traditional occupier that's in a lease, have always been in a lease, but wanting to entertain the thought of looking at flexible workspace. So the key that we've seen is that attraction to looking at flexible workspace versus 5, 6, 7 years ago, it would be a slam no. And now an occupier wants to see the opportunity that's available in the area. And it's more than the office now. So it isn't just a case of give me a space, put some desks in, I'm happy. It's now I need my own meeting rooms. I need my own demise. Anything over probably 2,000 square feet, they'll be looking for their own kitchen. So gone are the days where it's okay to just have a space and ram loads of desks. So that's one of the key trends that we've seen.
So what size, how many people in that sort of conversation are you talking about?
So, I mean, to give you some context to that, our average size requirement last year was about 42 desks. So that equates to around about 2,200 square feet, which for a flexible workspace requirement is actually quite large. I think the general rule of thumb would probably be 10 or 20 desks or something like that from a different online kind of brokerage. But we do work with occupiers significantly, anything under 7,000 square foot that will come through to our wider team. They'll generally want a dual approach. So by that, I mean, they'll want to look at traditional, managed, serviced, and anything really that suits with what they're looking for. As where before you would have that fine line, I either want A or B, and that's not the case.
So you're presumably running a search in parallel with the traditional office team as well. Do the inquiries come in first to the traditional team and they loop you in, or is it the other way around?
It's a bit of both, really. I think as a business, we're really, really fortunate because we are so large. So the referrals that we receive, over 95% will be from the Cushman machine. And by that, I mean it'll be corporate accounts or our leasing team, our US broker network. So we get to collaborate a lot across the business. So generally, something will come through, and because I lead the flex team, it will come through to me, and then I'll loop in one of the traditional guys and then someone from my team, and then they take it away and deal with it. I think the unique piece that has always worked with us is that as a team, we work so closely together, which the client recognizes. So there's never a push-pull. There's never a case of, no, we need to push them to serviced or we need to push them. It is always driven by what does the client need? What do they want to get out of things? How long do they need the space for? What's their journey that they want to achieve? And I feel like that's not always the case at a lot of places.
I think often as an operator, we get a customer coming in. If we know that they're looking at options between a traditional office and managed or service, then we want to make sure they understand the apples to apples comparison, the hidden cost of traditional, because otherwise we look like the most expensive option.
That's a really, really good point. Years ago, it would always be the case of, a serviced office, because it was just serviced offices before co-working popped out and managed came through. But it was always a case of, service is just too expensive. I'm not even going to look at it, because no one thought about everything else that you got included with the serviced office. It's not just the office. So what we've put together as a business is we have cash flows. There's not a push-pull either side. It's okay, these are the options, the opportunities. This is all of the costs that you need to be considering for total cost of occupancy based on whether it's a direct lease, and that could be whether it's Cat A, tenant space, etc., etc. So all the variations, all the way through to managed and serviced as well. And included in that is the important things like with a serviced office, it's the additional square footage that you get in the building versus what you don't get when you take other kind of scenarios. So it's not a simple solution to just break it all down, but actually from a client perspective, they find it really interesting. And it's things that they would have ignored in the past and just gone, no, it's dismissed. But it's that explanation that works well.
And is there a pattern of the customer that looks at those comparisons and goes one way or the other? Is the pattern the size of the customer? Is it the stage of the business? Is it their growth projections? Maybe the category of work that they do that determines I'm going to go flex or managed or I'm going to go traditional?
I'd love to say there was a pattern. I really would. And maybe it would be good to get, a group of the big agencies together to see if their trends from last year or the year before match ours, as an example. But I think the only pattern, or you could call it a trend really, is the fact of a traditional occupier now, the preference is not to take Cat A because obviously there's the cost to build the space out, as well as the cost of putting the space back when they leave. And the time they need to, get tenders out for design and build companies, manage that process, et cetera, et cetera. When you take a managed space, as you and I know, it's loaded into the cost, obviously, but the time isn't spent and there's no stress, there's no anything else. And I think from a traditional occupier perspective, they'll be looking for opportunities that aren't Cat A. Because of that CapEx cost, they don't want to be paying CapEx, dilapidations, the process, the time, everything else. Tenant release space is something which is incredibly popular, but there isn't a mass of that on the market. And obviously, occupiers still want prime space, they want grade A space. So therefore, there isn't masses of that either. So there's a situation where the flood to managed and even call it enterprise flex or enterprise serviced has been growing over the last 3 to 4 years because it just alleviates all of those additional costs and charges. We had an occupier they were in 45,000 square feet. They had an expiry coming up. They weren't considering flex for this move because they didn't need to. This was their headquarters, but they used flex in other parts of the world. Kind of right down to the wire, they'd never thought of looking at flex, but we did in the end, just as a scenario, as a building. And they ended up vacating their 45,000 square feet and they went into 13,000 square feet in a flex building. It's actually uncommon in High Holborn. They had the full space was customized for them, all set up, a 2-year term, amenities in the building. They're still in that building. They've had a great time in terms of they wanted to trial something different. There's some changes coming up in the business. But as a case study to show from an occupier perspective, going from 45,000 square feet into 13, change is hard, but it can happen and it does work.
I can imagine CFO's happy, massive savings.
Yes.
And they have this cool vibe of Uncommon. I've been in that High Holborn location, lots of green feeling there.
It's a great building.
It is fantastic. Yeah. And from an amenity factor, I can imagine the team coming into that building every day is fresh. It's certainly part of the whole flight to quality. That 13,000 square feet, you said they custom fitted it out. Did that have meeting rooms, etc., or did they use the overflow space in the building for that?
There's an interesting point here on meeting rooms. And I think even going back to the requirements and how that's changed from a 2,000 square foot scenario, every client we are seeing wants meeting rooms, even though they've got access to overflow meeting rooms. So from a larger scale, like this client that moved into the floor, the overflow of the meeting rooms was beneficial for them, but also the overflow of every other area. In case, people are working late, they can go and work in the lower ground floor. There was a gym, there's showers, there's bike racks, there's a roof terrace, there's lots of roaming space. But the floor was, because we caught the building at such a time, it was still a building site. We were climbing up ladders. So it was fun, but it was still, with the CEO and CFO and they're thinking, when's this ready by? But the space was completely designed in terms of the meeting room provision, how they needed the desks laid out, the zoning. There's 2 kitchens throughout the floor. So it was completely self-contained and even down to furniture, fittings, everything else for the private offices, for the C-suite, everything was included.
And what was the term again on that?
A 2-year term.
And so when you do that as Cushman, you place this client in 2-year term, they've got everything they want. Do you then step back in, I don't know, at 18 months and start seeing how they're doing? Are you checking in monthly? How do you ensure that they're happy for the long term And from an agency perspective, where Cushman might have got a 10-year lease in the past and a chunky commission, still get a decent commission on that size deal. And if you keep that client for a long time, it's even more. How does that work?
I never want to meet a client and just work with them once. And my team are the same. We're looking for partnerships. So we want to partner with people, not just a one-off, place you in a building, thank you very much. It's where else can we help? What else do you need? Or maybe you don't know what you need. Let us try and figure that out. And with that specific client in High Holborn, it wasn't a check-in after 12 or 18 months. I got on incredibly well with a couple of the people in the leadership team. I've been down there a lot. I go and sit in their office. I have a coffee. It's that kind of scenario because you're working so closely with these clients sometimes. And the office move is important. It's like moving house. It needs to feel right. You end up building a connection with people. And that's the same with a lot of our clients. I would hope all of our clients. It's more of a partnership we're looking to build, not just one-offs.
Have you seen any examples on a client like that you've placed, and then in 2 years or whatever time frame, they actually maybe outgrow that particular space of the flex operator and grow into the building?
No, we haven't had that. I mean, we had one client that took, our largest transaction was 180,000 square feet, but it's probably, but we haven't had one that's moved out of flex into traditional in the same building.
Well, I think that's a good example. And, Uncommon's a great brand. It's a great vibe there. Shout out to Chris Davies and team.
Yeah.
I'm curious, going back to, I always look for patterns. And so I'm curious if you're seeing any patterns on when you're taking people on tours. Real estate's always been about location, location, location. Yep. I believe the future is about brand and service and hospitality and the community and the vibe. How much of the topic of brand plays into your tours and your conversations with your customers?
I'm thinking about the team here as well, not just myself, because they go on a lot more tours than I do day to day. So from a discussion around brand, I mean, that comes into play well before you even take the client out on tours. That's in developing the shortlist of buildings. Who's the operator in the building? Does that work for the brand that we're wanting to place in them?
So can you dive a little bit deep on that? Because I really want to unpack this. In those early conversations, what did that conversation look like?
It's just building out the brief. What is it they want to get from the space? What's been working for them in their current space? Whether that's flex or traditional, it doesn't matter. What do they want to do going forward? What's the team dynamic? Is there growth? Have they got changes that they know about that might not be growth, but there's other things happening within the business? It really is sometimes about finding the dream space, but in some cases it's not. It's just a space that they need to move into to readjust as a business over a 1 to 2 year term. And as part of that, the whole brand element, because of our average size requirement, everyone does want customization. I would say 80% of the requirements that we're working on will want some form of customization, whether that's meeting rooms or offices or, town hall spaces put in. It doesn't matter. There is something that has to be incorporated into the space. And therefore, that forms part of their brand. And then we start to talk to them about, okay, what do you know about flexible workspace? What do you know about flexible workspace operators? Because clients have their own views on who they want to work with, who they don't. And then we go through a process of talking about, here's the opportunities. This is who manages this building. What we know about these guys and what we could recommend is X, Y, Z. We think they'd be best placed for you because of ABC. And it really is us talking to the client. And I think sometimes flexible operators need to realize that if a broker is advising properly, they will be talking to the client about their own experiences, about the past clients that they've placed with them, to think about placing other clients with them. Because again, we're looking to partner with occupiers. We're not looking to place people in one-off. So it's really, really important that we have the right operator, right for the brand. The service levels are there for hospitality, and it's not that we don't want to move the client again afterwards. We would love to, but if it works, it's great that they stay. And that's what we need to get right.
That's interesting. And it's good advice as well for operators listening, how to think about the partnership with brokers. It is hopefully a long-term partnership and not one-off churn them and burn them type of thing. Certainly an operator would like to have their customers renew.
Of course.
But I want to go a little bit more on the brand piece, and I want to ask it in a slightly different way, because I think the customer's brand and the size requirements you're dealing with is super important. Some customers might not want to go into a shared space where their brand gets diluted. They want to have their own separate demise. I get that.
Yep.
It allows them to customize and build their own culture. Is there ever a time, or is there a trigger in your conversations that this particular operator brand is going to be aligned with that customer's brand, or I need to find this operator because the customer brand is XYZ?
That happens quite quickly, to be honest. And that may be, Caleb, because I've been doing this for a very, very long time. So my brain is like a revolving, operator platform. So I hope I know what the client wants. However, there are only, if we're talking about central London, there are set brands. And if you thought of three different layers, top, middle, and bottom.
Value, mid-market, premium.
Exactly.
Okay.
I like that. And when you're talking to a client straight away, talking about the brief, what they want, you can gauge where that needs to be. And therefore, it's quite easy to then start the process of recommending the operator brand that suits with their brand and that they might want to progress with. So yeah, that's how we would talk through that.
So I'm glad you said that, and I kind of wanted in the exploration of this, because brand, I talk about it a lot, and people probably roll their eyes that I'm talking about it right now. But when it comes to the brand of the operator, there's sort of B Corp stuff. There is the value brands, the mid markets, and the premium. But beyond that, deeper than that, it becomes the vibe, the aesthetics, the look and feel, the programming. Do the customers who want their own private space, do they care about those things?
They do. And to be honest, again, the size that we're dealing with, every one of our client wants their own space. So it will generally not be anything which is a 5-desk requirement, as an example. And therefore, they want their own demise, but they need access to the other areas, which is why they're looking at the flexible workspace. So the fact that when they have clients coming in, they need the kind of scenario where there's that front of house presence. It looks collaborative, it looks welcoming, it's clean, well designed, and it's something that the client doesn't have to think about. It's just there, and then they get a call when people are arriving. And even not from a client perspective, the team. Everyone needs the office for people to come in and use the office, let's face it. So therefore, it needs to be in keeping with the brand. And I hate to say, and people don't really talk about it anymore, which is good, is that earn my commute back into the office. Why are we drawing the team back in, and how are we going to do that? And that really is about the environment that you're acquiring for them to sit in, think, collaborate, and work, which leads to success.
Definitely. And the buildings, they need to be a destination for people.
Absolutely.
100% agree with that. I think that for many years in our industry, going back to IWG and MWB days, we all competed by selling on price, on location, on the fact that we had either private offices or flexible space or great Wi-Fi or maybe some coffee and teas that we charge £30 a month for. But because there is so much more brand differentiation out there, there's an Uncommon that's got this biophilic feel when you walk in High Holborn. You've got, the Ministry, which is a kind of a funky vibe.
I love the Ministry.
Great. You've got Space Maid, which is very customized to the local community that they're in. You've got Brave.
Yeah, of course.
Of course, I have to say that. You've got all these different vibes. And as an operator, sometimes we wonder if the brokers are able to translate that and not just look at the numbers apples to apples, but actually go deep on what we're selling beyond the desks and the pricing. That's why I'm asking all these questions and going hard on this. So do you think that the more that we as operators get better at communicating our brand values and what we stand for, the customers that we're supporting and how we're supporting them with programming, is that going to help make your job easier to place customers with the right people?
Absolutely. But it's a very British term, but I will say anyway, the proof is in the pudding. So it's all very well to have explanations and walks around buildings and send packs about sustainability credentials and, what else they're doing on the roof that the buildings up the road aren't doing, et cetera, et cetera. But when we are placing people in the buildings, we need to make sure that what's been signed up for is delivered. And that is the key message. With your thought around and what you said about buildings that have got, amenity en masse, like Uncommon and Fora, they have Chancery Lane, which is just up the road from the Uncommon building. Sometimes that's too much for an occupier. So there's one end of the spectrum to the other. The clients will walk in and they'll be like, I love this, but it's not right for my business. But I'd love to come here and work, but I can't have an office here. So sometimes it's that drawback of um, too good is not right, and just finding other space solutions that meet with the demand and the day-to-day that they need, especially if they've been used to being in a leasehold office. Flipping something 360 and going into a mass amenity environment can be too extreme for that change and that kind of re-gear of them utilizing a new workspace.
All right, I'm gonna maybe ask a bit of a controversial question. Hopefully, it doesn't put you on the spot.
Okay.
But the last one on the brand for a second, at least on this podcast episode. If operators become really good at the brand and living up to what they promise and sell, they get really good at it, and that brand becomes strong. WeWork had a strong brand. Do you think that's going to help or hurt the values that the brokers bring?
I think on that front, with regards to supporting the way that a broker may operate, operators still need brokers to be advising clients, because a client, even though they've gone direct to maybe WeWork or IWG, for whoever, Brave, they are still going to be contacting other operators. It's quite rare for them to just contact one. So therefore, from a broker perspective, and we have this a lot actually, where an operator will, you may get rejected in terms of the client's gone direct to the building, but then the operator will say, however, we would like Cushman and Wakefield to work on this if the client is happy to do so. Of course, the client is, because we've been appointed. But a lot of the time, that isn't the case for other brokers, I think. And so we're in a fortunate position because I think the operators know we add value. And therefore, in some cases, they may not take that building, but we're still running the full advisory process. Again, we're not just pushing people into buildings, so that the value of having a broker involved, if they are an advisory broker, is strong, not only for the occupier, but also for the office provider, just to make sure that everything is seamless.
Spoken like a true broker. No,
Advisor.
advisor, yes. If you're a landlord, operator, or investor without a big team or expensive tools, this is for you. Did you know you don't have to be a freak in the sheets to compete with the REITs? I'm talking about spreadsheets. You know how painful it is. Long builds, fragile formulas, missing assumptions. And even when it's finally working, you still wonder if you can trust it, let alone present it with confidence to investors and lenders. Return Suite changes all of that. Save hours or even days. Its intuitive interface lets you model a property's cash flow in minutes with no Excel mastery required. Model with precision, enter actual rent, CapEx, debt, lease roll schedules, and much more. Build trust by collaborating in real time, upload operating cash flows, and generate polished, transparent reporting dashboards for any stakeholder. With Return Suite, you're in control. Every assumption is fully traceable, nothing breaks under real-world complexity. And drumroll for my Brave audience, they're building a flex space module too. Head over to returnsuite.com/brave to start modeling better deals today. I think I could probably speak for most operators, and maybe I shouldn't assume that I can do that, but we love our broker and advisor relationships.
Yep.
We're happy to pay a really good advisor for bringing clients to us, no doubt. We're also happy if we pay less in commissions.
Yep.
So it's just like a double-edged sword there. We love it and we hate it. But I think I have this view that the more technology gets better in our industry, digital marketing and booking tools, the Airbnb-ification,
Yeah.
the better we get a brand. There is a risk, maybe, that brokers could feel disintermediated. Having said that, I think that with a couple of small tweaks and embracing technology and these different platforms, brokers could enhance their value.
Agreed. And I think you mentioned WeWork earlier in terms of the volume of direct clients they must have now, let alone 5 or 6 years ago. It was insane, right? The marketing that they had, everything out on socials. We'd have corporate clients that were already talking to WeWork because they'd heard, they'd been into a meeting And you're right. If WeWork can do it, why can't other operators do that at the same time? But again, it's that case of brokers, advisors, agents, whatever we want to call ourselves. We need to show the value of what we're delivering, but not only to the occupier that we're advising, to the operators as well. Because as we all know, being transparent, and occupiers know this, our fee comes from the operators.
With the requirements that you're dealing with, the customers that are needing space for 2,000, 3,000, 7,000 square feet, and you put them into their new space. In the way that we work today, hybrid, we've got distributed teams, we've got offices in other cities. How much of your customers' flex footprint is within that one building you put them in versus touching down and getting day passes and booking meeting rooms across the globe?
Depends on the size of the occupier. We have something at Cushman, it's called Cushman & Wakefield Passport, which was actually generated out of our US Flex business. My colleague, Christine, helped to develop that with Upflex. And that's something that we've worked with a lot of occupiers, whether it's a discussion piece around how much do you need in terms of a physical space versus touchdown points. And not only that, but the data behind it. So the utilization, it's all very well people having memberships to check in, check out, book a meeting room. But how does that look on a monthly basis or on a quarterly basis to then make an informed decision of, oh, actually now we need another physical space? So when I compare my UK based team, but we're advising global occupiers versus what's been going on in the US, and I say over the last 3 years, that kind of product picked up quicker from the US in terms of the kind of the occupiers that they were working with. And you and I both know the return to the office in the States was significantly different to what we had in London, let alone Europe, et cetera, et cetera. So I think the touchdown membership cards is still a thing. IWG have been doing it forever, let's face it. But the aggregator platform, I think, works well for businesses that don't want one style of building to go and touch down in. And it gives everyone their own identity in terms of where they want to work from for the day. I would say as a theme running through what we're dealing with day to day, probably only 20% of the occupiers we're working with will have the kind of touchdown pass points scenario. I don't know why. We have discussions with them. We look through in terms of what they might need going forward. We are talking to an occupier at the moment, which started off with just a London office requirement, which has got larger and larger. Then after talking to them, they are looking for offices in the Middle East, something else in Europe. And we're also in discussions on a aggregator scenario for them as well. So again, the client, they don't always know that they need it. They don't know that it exists, but it's about just, pulling information out and what do they need and going forward, how does it work? Because it's not always about a physical office. We can just utilize flexible workspace solutions to deliver what they need.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm glad you mentioned Upflex, these aggregation platforms out there. I'm friends with all of them, and I think they're doing some great stuff. I had this dream 10 years ago that real estate agents and brokers would turn into travel agents, and they'd be managing the bookings versus transactions. And maybe it hasn't come to fruition yet completely, but it's good to see that at least 20% getting there. What do you think's missing from what operators are doing or what landlords are providing? What's missing that would help make your customers' lives easier and make your job easier?
Because we've been doing this for so long in terms of the flex business at Cushman & Wakefield, we're self-sufficient in terms of what we need from a landlord or a flex operator. And if we don't get that, we can find it and we can deliver it ourselves. But I think from a landlord perspective, and as we both know, landlords' mindsets have changed, right? So instead of having a space sitting empty, they're now entertaining the thought of managed or part fitting it and delivering it back to the market, which will let quicker than a Cat A space for the reasons we spoke about earlier, occupiers not looking to spend on CapEx. However, there's always an issue with pre-built space, because whether you're a flex operator or whether you're a landlord or or managed operator, you'll have something which will sit completely empty. And then when you start to think about cellularizing the space, you then have a client that comes in, and it seems to be the way quite a lot. You have a client that comes in and they'll say, no, I need all of this pulled down. So instead of pre-fitting space, perhaps just allocating a budget to align with when an occupier comes in, they can have something built to spec within reason, instead of things having to be knocked down, reshifted or changed, which works on a couple of different levels, right? Works for is a better transaction overall for the client. It's therefore easier as well for the landlord or the operator and not having to pull things down and waste materials. I do understand that once an operator or a landlord has people fitting the space out, that's why they do it there and then. But that would be one of the key things. And the only other scenario, I think, which we're not going to get some kind of black and white solutions on, is the whole piece around managed, because it's still quite confusing. And just looking at the London bubble that we have, the quantum of managed that's available in the city is huge. And if I said in a month the different types of, whether it's a traditional lease and with managed services plugged on a separate contract, whether it's a short form lease with managed services, whether it's a short form lease with managed services included, or it might be a story, which is a flex lease, GPE, which is a flex lease, it's confusing. So I think that would be another message to, it's obviously popular, occupiers want it, but how do we make it clearer for not just the occupier, but also the agents that are trying to let it for them? So that's quite a big message, I think, that we need to get right.
We need to keep it simple, stupid.
Please.
John Williams, formerly at Instant, was on the podcast seasons past, and he said, customers don't come out looking, I need a flex space. They need a space for their team. It just so happens they might need it on flexible terms.
Agreed.
They're not, looking for a managed office solution.
No.
Quotation marks.
No.
They just know they need X, Y, and Z.
Agreed. Which comes down to the whole, a client is looking for opportunities. So the whole leasehold flex managed, it all goes out the window, and then it's our job as the advisor to be delivering it. But don't make our job difficult. I feel like we've been going through a phase with everything over the last 3 years. We've got lots of new managed operators which have popped up. It is popular. It's not going to go away, but the grey area isn't getting clearer. It's in fact getting greyer and greyer because of the way that a traditional landlord is now agreeing to do this versus the way that the story and a GPE deliver it. It's a completely different scenario. So we just need to nail this contractual piece and make it simple, which I think will help the occupier and it will help to let space quicker again.
You made a couple points a moment ago, and it made me think of this. In one of the landlord management agreements we did a couple years ago, we had a floor that we chopped up into 2,500 square foot units.
Yeah.
We didn't fit them all out. We fitted one out, and we left the others we didn't even separately demise. It was just one big space that could be chopped up.
Yeah.
But we had one. It was a show suite, and that enabled us to quickly sell the idea.
Yeah.
And close on that one, and then we could just build another one, and it's sort of like built into the capex it was budgeted for, and the money sat there, but we didn't spend it until we had a client. But I wonder if, with the likes of like Bright Spaces and we've seen a couple of these digital tools out there, could a landlord put that budget aside, maybe spend a couple pounds a square foot to create a virtual plan to give that customer the ability to look at, I want option A, B, C, cheap, not cheap, crazy expensive, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They could toggle through, see what it looks like.
Yep.
I know they're out there. Do you think if we took the entire inventory out there in the UK that has this empty space that could be managed space and put it into a digital format, is that good enough, or does it need to be fitted out, pre-fitted?
I'm quite fussy on this one. I think I still don't think from a digital perspective it will be good enough. It will be good enough for certain clients that are walking around and they're used to dealing with real estate. They live, they breathe it, that's their role. But let's face it, we're not always dealing with people from a real estate background. So then trying to show them what something might look like on a CGI or a digital platform, and that's great for the agent. We get it, and it would make our life easier. But from a client perspective, they need to feel, they need to touch it, they need to stand in it. And a lot of the time I find when you take a client into a Cat A space, if we're looking at managed, And you'll say, so this, which is completely empty, will look like this. And it's, and it looks great on the plan. And many clients are, still signing up for this, and it works. But I think just going down that digital route, you're still going to, from a landlord or an operator perspective, you are going to miss out on opportunities because you've gone too far down the digital side.
Okay. Well, it's good to hear that feedback. Thank you for sharing that. This has been a great conversation. I've got lots more questions here, but I don't think we have enough time for it. So we might have to bring you back in for another conversation.
I'm fine with that. That's it.
I guess I do want to squeeze one last one in though, if that's okay. And this is just from an operator side, a question for all my operator friends for you. We're sending you availability, so you can quickly identify who has availability for your client's need. Mm-hmm. Do you want that availability in square feet? Do you want it in, by the desk? How do you want the pricing? What's the easiest way to make your job easier?
Going with my own trend of being honest, don't send it in desks. Gone are the days of people working in desks in terms of a cost. I think anything over a requirement, which is potentially 10 desks, shouldn't be categorized on a desk payment basis. And that's purely because you can't compare like for like across other operators, because if you don't know the size of the square footage, which is deeming the desk allocation, then how do you know what value the client's getting back from the different options?
Well, this is going to go back to the early question.
Yeah.
How you provide the apples to apples, because we need to be able to trust that you're going to give them a GIA versus NIA kind of scenario.
And we do, but from that, a lot of operators still don't give square footage. We work in square footage because we're not just dealing with clients that are looking at flexible workspace. And if it isn't flexible workspace, it's never deemed in desks or anything at all. It's always square footage. So therefore, from an advisory and from a broker scenario, we need the square foot of the office, so the private demise, but also don't forget the square footage of all of the additional space in the building, because that's forgotten. You're walking around on a viewing, you see the office, which is great. It's got private this, private that, there's a kitchen. You get given the total square footage for that space, but you've just walked through 22,000 square feet of communal collaboration, phone booth, there's a bar, there's a restaurant. No one even mentions it. And that is something that we have to chase to say, can we have the size of the communal amenity that you have in the building? Because we need to put that in our reporting.
Epic. Good stuff. Thank you. This is super helpful. If people have questions, can they connect with you on LinkedIn?
Of course. Absolutely.
Okay, we'll put a link to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes.
Thank you.
Give my regards to Emma Swinnerton.
I will.
And thank you so much for joining today. Thank you back to Workplace Creations, Dan Carey, for hosting us. And until next time, take care of yourself.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
If you've enjoyed this episode, you'll enjoy our Brave Ideas newsletter. Subscribe today by tapping on the link in the show notes. And don't forget, I'm always on the lookout for buildings to acquire and reposition with brand-led hospitality. If you know a building I should look at or an owner looking to sell or partner with, drop me a DM or contact us at bravecorp.co. Until next time, take care of yourself.